The signal. The stars hung quiet in the dark sea of space, their cold light touching the metal skin of the Vraeth Dominion's fleet. 12 warships moved in a steady formation, their engines glowing a pale green as they crossed the black void. At the front, the flagship Iron Fang led the way. Inside its bridge, Admiral Kvar sat in the command chair, his 4 golden eyes scanning the glowing displays before him. The Vraeth were an old and proud race, conquerors of dozens of systems, and Kvar was one of their most feared leaders. But today was not a mission of war, at least not yet. They had been sent to investigate a strange signal that had been echoing from an uncharted system at the edge of the galaxy. The signal was unusual, repeating every 10 seconds like the beat of a mechanical heart. No known race had used such a pattern before. "Admiral," called out the sensor officer, his voice tense. "We are locking on to the source. Still no identification, but the energy levels are strange." Kvar leaned forward. "Strange how?" The officer hesitated. "It feels alive. The power signature is steady, but there's a rhythm to it. Like it's watching us." That drew a ripple of uneasy laughter from the bridge crew. Machines did not watch. Signals did not breathe. Kvar allowed himself a thin smile. "We are warriors, not children afraid of shadows. Set course for the source. Full speed." The fleet surged forward. For hours they crossed the empty dark, the signal growing louder with every passing minute. It was no longer just sound in the comms. The crew could feel it, a low pulse deep in their chests. Some swore they could hear faint whispers under the beat, like voices just out of reach. "Could be an automated defense system," one officer said. "Or a distress beacon," another offered. Kvar said nothing. His mind was already imagining the glory of claiming whatever technology lay ahead for the Dominion. At last, the navigator spoke. "Admiral, we have visual contact." The main screen lit up. At first, the image was only darkness, then something massive slid into view. A shape against the void. It hung there, silent and still, as if it had been waiting for them. It was a ship, but unlike any the Vraeth had ever seen. Its hull was a deep black, swallowing the light around it, with lines of faint blue running along its surface like veins of frozen lightning. The design was sharp, brutal, and alien. The bridge went silent. "How large is it?" Kvar asked. The answer came after a pause. "Admiral, it's bigger than the Iron Fang. Possibly bigger than any warship on record." Kvar's eyes narrowed. "And what race builds such a thing?" We cannot identify it," the sensor officer said. "It matches no design in any database." The signal they had been chasing was now deafening in their ears. It came from the black ship, pulsing like a heartbeat. Suddenly, the comms crackled to life. A voice spoke in perfect Vraethi, clear, calm, and without a hint of fear. "This is the human Navy vessel Resolute. Identify yourself." The crew exchanged shocked looks. Humans? The word was barely known among the stars, a minor race, not even worth a footnote in the Dominion's war records. "How do they know our language?" a junior officer whispered. Kvar's lips pulled back in a slow smile. "It doesn't matter. Send a reply. Tell them this ship and their crew now belong to the Vraeth Dominion. If they resist, they will be destroyed." The message was sent. The alien no, the human ship remained still. Then the voice returned. "Turn back. Last warning." The bridge filled with laughter. One ship, facing 12 warships of the Dominion? Madness. But the laughter died when the Resolute began to move. Its engines lit with a cold blue light, brighter and brighter until the darkness around it seemed to retreat. The sensors began to wail warnings, energy levels rising far beyond what any ship should hold. Kvar leaned forward, his golden eyes fixed on the massive black vessel. "Prepare weapons," he ordered. "Let's teach these humans their place." The signal's pulse quickened, now pounding like a war drum. And somewhere deep in the gut of every Vraeth on that bridge, a quiet feeling began to stir. Not anger, not pride, but something far older. Fear. First sight. The black warship moved with a slow, deliberate grace, like a predator that had no reason to hurry. The Resolute turned its massive hull toward the Vraeth fleet, its lines sharp and deadly, every surface designed for war. There were no markings, no banners, no symbols of pride, only that deep black armor that seemed to drink in the light. The space around it felt wrong. The stars behind it seemed dimmer, as if the ship itself was swallowing their light. Even the constant hum of the Dominion warship's engines felt quieter, as though the Resolute was pulling the sound out of the air. On the bridge of the Iron Fong, no one spoke for a long moment. The crew simply stared at the view screen, their eyes tracing the alien vessel's massive silhouette. "It's beautiful," whispered one of the younger officers, before realizing he'd spoken out loud. Kvar's golden eyes narrowed. Beautiful was not the word he would use. Dangerous. Silent. Hungry. "Report on their weapons," he ordered. The sensor officer's hands flew over the controls, but his voice shook when he answered. I can't, Admiral. Every time we scan them, the readings change. One moment it's like they have nothing more than railguns. The next, it shows energy output enough to destroy a moon." Kvar leaned forward. "Are you telling me their ship is cloaking its true power?" "I'm saying, Admiral, I think it's lying to our scanners." That sent a cold ripple through the bridge. Machines didn't lie. The Resolute held its position, silent and watchful. The heartbeat-like signal they had been following still pulsed through the comms, each beat now sharper, louder, like the ticking of a countdown clock. One of the tactical officers muttered, "They want us to fire first." Kvar's gaze never left the screen. "Good. Then we will give them the honor." But before he could speak the command, the Resolute moved again. It wasn't fast in the way Dominion ships were fast. This was something else. There was no wasted motion, no drift, no hesitation. The giant vessel turned and slid closer as though space itself bent to its will. The distance between them shrank rapidly, and the Vraeth crews began to feel it. The same cold pressure they had felt in the signal, now pressing against their minds. The comms crackled again. The same calm, human voice spoke. "This is your last chance. Leave this system." Something in that voice made the hair rise on the backs of their necks. It wasn't a threat shouted in rage. It was quiet, certain. The voice of someone who already knew the ending of this story. Kvar forced a smile. "Last chance for them, not us. Target their engines." The weapons crews obeyed, and the fleet's forward cannons began to glow with charging energy. The Resolute didn't move to evade. Instead, its hull shifted, entire sections of armor sliding apart to reveal weapons hidden beneath. At first, they looked almost ordinary. But as they locked into place, the energy they gave off slammed into the Dominion sensors like a physical blow. Alarms screamed across every Vraeth ship. Power readings spiked so high that some scanners simply shut down to avoid burning out. "Admiral," the sensor officer's voice cracked. "If those weapons fire, none of us will survive." For the first time, Kvar felt a faint tremor in his own hands. The human voice returned, softer now, almost regretful. "You were warned." The Resolute's main cannon began to charge. Its glow was not the bright heat of plasma or the crackling fire of ion weapons. This was cold light, pure and sharp, as if it could cut through space itself. All across the Dominion fleet, the bravest warriors of the Vraeth found themselves staring at it in silence, each feeling the same thought crawl into their minds. "We should not be here." The message. The bridge of the Iron Fong was silent. No one moved, no one breathed too loud. Every eye was locked on the massive black warship ahead. The Resolute hovered in the void like a god of war, its cold blue glow casting strange shadows across the Dominion fleet. Then, without warning, the comms came alive. The same human voice filled the air. "This is the human Navy vessel, Resolute. You are trespassing in restricted space. Leave now, or be destroyed." It was not shouted. There was no anger, no desperation. The voice was steady, almost gentle. That calmness made it worse. It was the voice of someone who knew the outcome. Admiral Kvar sat back in his chair, forcing a smirk onto his face. "They think they can frighten us with words." But not everyone on the bridge shared his confidence. A few exchanged nervous glances. Others stared down at their consoles, pretending to work while trying not to meet the Admiral's gaze. Kvar gestured to the comm officer. Open a channel. When the line was open, Kvar's voice was hard, filled with the arrogance of the Dominion. Human vessel, you are in the presence of the Vraeth Dominion's war fleet. You will surrender immediately. Power down your engines and prepare for boarding. Any refusal will result in your total destruction. The reply came almost instantly.
No.
One word. Cold. Absolute. Final. Before Kvar could respond, the human voice continued. Admiral Kvar, of the Vraeth Dominion, you are responsible for the destruction of 3 minor colonies. You have executed prisoners. You have enslaved survivors. You have 47 war crimes recorded under your name. The bridge froze. No one had told the humans his name. No one outside the Dominion should even know those details.
Kvar's smirk vanished.
How? The voice pressed on unshaken. This is your last warning. Turn back, or you and your fleet will not leave this place alive. The pulse of the signal they had been chasing all this way had changed. It was no longer slow and steady. It was faster now, sharper, the beat of war drums. A low hum began to rise from the Resolute. Not the sound of engines, but something deeper, something the crew felt in their bones. Lights rippled across its hull in slow patterns, like the breathing of some great beast. Admiral, the sensor officer said in a tight voice, their weapon systems are changing again. I don't know what they're doing, but whatever it is, I don't think we can match it. Kvar snapped his gaze toward him. Enough. They're bluffing. Charge all forward cannons. The Dominion fleet obeyed. Massive energy surges lit the darkness. But even as their weapons came online, the Resolute stayed perfectly still. Then, something happened that no one in the Vraeth fleet had ever seen before. The human warship vanished. One moment, it filled their view with black steel and cold blue light. The next, it was gone, as if the space it occupied had swallowed itself. The scanner scrambled. Alarms wailed. Every officer began shouting readings. It's behind us, one shouted. The view screen spun, and there it was. The Resolute now hovered directly at the rear of the Dominion formation, its weapons aimed forward. Somehow, it had crossed the entire battlefield without a single trace. How did they? The navigator began, but stopped when the human voice returned. This is not your war, Admiral. This is not your territory. Leave now, or we will erase you from the stars. The glow from its main weapon began to rise again. Kvar's fists clenched on the armrests of his chair. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice whispered to him, the same one his crew was hearing. You can't win. The warning. The Resolute hung behind the Vraeth fleet like a shadow that had learned to breathe. No one on the Iron Fang's bridge spoke. The only sound was the steady thrum of the Dominion warship's own engines, a sound that suddenly felt small, fragile, compared to the quiet presence of the human vessel. Every officer could feel it now. The air seemed heavier, as if the weight of the human warship's gaze pressed against their skin. The pulse in the comms had grown faster, matching the rhythm of their own hearts. It wasn't just noise anymore. It felt intentional. Then the human voice came again. This is your final warning. Leave this system now. Still, there was no rage in that voice. It was measured, calm, almost gentle, like a predator telling its prey that running would be pointless. That calmness made the threat worse. Admiral Kvar forced himself to stand. His movements were slow, deliberate, like he was refusing to let them see any weakness. Ready all weapons, he ordered. Target the human vessel. His crew obeyed, but there was no energy in their voices, no battle lust. They moved like men and women climbing the steps to their own execution. Tactical, Kvar snapped, lock onto their engines. Let's take out their mobility first. The tactical officer's claws hovered above the control panel. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. Admiral, our targeting systems won't lock. They keep shifting coordinates. It's like they're everywhere at once. Kvar turned sharply toward the screen. The Resolute still sat there, motionless, but the readings flickered and shifted as though it was moving faster than the eye could see. "Admiral," the voice came from the sensor station now. I think they're inside our system. Not physically. They've accessed our targeting arrays. They're rewriting them." Kvar's jaw tightened. Impossible. But the fear in the officer's eyes said otherwise. Suddenly, the Resolute's weapon bays opened again, but this time, more ports unfolded, sliding out from its armor like blades unsheathing from a scabbard. The glow from inside was cold and sharp, not fire, not heat, something else, something older and more precise than any weapon the Dominion had seen. The light from those weapons painted the Vraeth fleet in pale blue. In that glow, every Dominion warrior saw themselves reflected not as conquerors, but as prey. "Admiral," the calm officer's voice trembled. "We're getting a fleet-wide message from the human ship." "Play it," Kvar ordered. The voice filled every ship in the Dominion fleet. Every soldier, every officer, every crewman heard it at the same time. "You came here for conquest. You will leave here in silence. This is your last chance to survive." The words hit like an invisible strike. It wasn't just what the human was saying, it was how it was said. The voice carried something beneath the sound, something that crawled into the minds of those who heard it. It felt like truth. Unshakable truth. One of Kvar's junior captains opened a private channel to him. "Admiral, maybe we should." Kvar cut him off. "Enough. They think we're afraid. We'll show them fear belongs to them." But even as he spoke, something deep inside him knew the truth. The fear didn't belong to the humans. It belonged to them. The Resolute's main weapon began to charge. Slowly. Purposefully. Not rushing. Not wasting energy. Just letting them watch. Letting them feel what was about to happen. Every second stretched longer. The hum from the human ship grew louder, sharper, until it felt like it was drilling into their bones. And then, silence. The glow stopped. The hum died away. For a moment, hope flickered across the bridge. Maybe the humans had stood down. But then the voice came back low and final. "Your time is up." The first strike. The final words, "Your time is up," still hung in the air when the darkness lit up. The Resolute's main weapon ignited with a deep, cold light, not the burning heat of plasma or the crackle of ion fire. This was different. The beam that formed at its core was sharp, pure, like a blade made from frozen starlight. It hummed with a sound so low and deep it made the Vraeth crew's teeth ache. On the iron fong, every officer leaned forward as if pulled by an invisible thread. Even Kvar, for all his pride, could not take his eyes off that growing light. "Admiral, their weapon is at 98% charge," the sensor officer shouted. "Fire." Kvar roared. The Dominion fleet obeyed. A storm of energy bolts, railgun slugs, and missile trails filled the void. The black ship disappeared beneath the blinding fury of the Vraeth's arsenal. Explosions flared across its position, so bright they painted the inside of the Iron Fong's bridge with violent flashes. For a few seconds, there was hope. Then the light faded. The Resolute was still there, untouched. The Dominion's most powerful weapons had struck its shields, and the shields had not even flickered. A single ripple of pale light passed over the human vessel's surface, like water disturbed by a pebble, and then it was gone. No damage. No weakness. No mercy. The hum of its main cannon hit its peak. And then it fired. The beam tore through space, not as a burst of flame, but as a clean, surgical stroke. There was no explosion at first, only silence as the light passed through the lead Dominion cruiser. Then, almost gently, the ship came apart, splitting into two perfect halves. Both halves drifted in opposite directions, their internal fires blooming into the black. No one on the bridge of the Iron Fong spoke. No one needed to. They had all just seen a single shot erase one of their strongest ships. The Resolute did not slow down. Its secondary weapons came alive, precise bursts of light that leapt across the void, each one finding a target with impossible accuracy. A destroyer erupted into dust. A gunship vanished in a silent blossom of fire. One by one, Dominion vessels fell, their destruction so fast it felt less like a battle and more like an execution. Evasive maneuvers. Kvar barked, but his voice carried a shadow of desperation now. The fleet tried to scatter, but the Resolute moved as if it could predict their every turn. It didn't chase them wildly. It simply appeared where it needed to be. Each movement was short, sharp, and final. Missiles from the Vraeth ships streaked toward it. The human vessel didn't even bother to dodge. Small bursts of blue light shot out from its hull, intercepting every warhead before it came close. On the Iron Fong, the comms filled with chaos. "This is Skytelone. We've lost all shields. Admiral, they've disabled our targeting. We're hit. We're static." Kvar gritted his teeth. Focus all fire on their bridge. The Vraeth fleet turned their weapons toward the heart of the Resolute, but before they could fire, the human ship's voice filled the channel once again. "This is over." The next beam was faster, brighter. It speared through 2 ships at once, slicing them apart like paper. The wreckage drifted away, silent in the void. In less than 3 minutes, half the Dominion fleet was gone. Not crippled, not retreating.
Gone.
And still, the Resolute did not sound triumphant. It did not gloat. It simply kept advancing, calm and inevitable, like the hand of fate itself. Kvar stared at the screen, his mind racing. For the first time in his long career, he began to wonder not if they could win, but if they could survive. The hunt, the battlefield, was no longer a clash of fleets. It had become a graveyard. The burning wrecks of Dominion warships drifted silently through the dark, their shattered hulls glowing with faint embers. Pieces of armor and broken weapons spun lazily in zero gravity. Here and there, escape pods floated, their tiny beacons blinking weakly like dying fireflies. And in the middle of it all, the Resolute moved. It did not charge. It did not rush. It glided through the debris field with the patience of something that knew there was nowhere for its prey to run. Each movement was precise, deliberate, a shark weaving through the bones of the ocean. Inside the Iron Fong, Admiral Kvar gripped the arms of his command chair so tightly his claws left marks in the metal. How many ships remain?" he demanded. 5, Admiral," the tactical officer replied, his voice shaking. "Not including us. 5 out of 12. Gone in minutes." Kvar's mind screamed for action, but his body felt heavy, sluggish. The human ship wasn't just destroying their vessels, it was breaking their will. On the far edge of the formation, the Blood Fong, a smaller Dominion destroyer, tried to make a run for it. Its engines roared, heat trails blazing as it accelerated toward deep space. The Resolute turned toward it. It didn't fire immediately. It simply began moving, matching the fleeing ship's course exactly. No matter how the Blood Fong twisted or rolled, the Resolute mirrored the movement with effortless precision. It was not chasing, it was hurting. The Dominion destroyer's captain opened a fleet-wide channel, panic in his voice. "They're right behind us. I can't shake them."
They.
The transmission cut off as a single burst of cold light tore through the destroyer's engines. There was no explosion. The back half of the ship simply ceased to exist. The rest spun helplessly before another beam split it apart completely. One more voice in the fleet went silent. 4 ships left, the tactical officer whispered. The Resolute did not pause to celebrate. It simply drifted toward the next target, a heavy cruiser still trying to bring its main cannon online. Before the cruiser could fire, a cluster of blue streaks erupted from the human vessel, striking its weapon systems with pinpoint accuracy. The cruiser's cannon went dark, its lights flickered, and then the Resolute fired a single shot straight through its core. 3. The survivors began to scatter in desperation, engines flaring as they tried to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the human warship. But the Resolute did not give chase in the way they expected. It didn't pick one ship and pursue it until it was gone. It hunted them all at once. It would vanish in one spot and reappear near another fleeing ship, tearing it apart before slipping back into the shadows of space. Its weapons fired without hesitation, each shot killing with mechanical perfection. It didn't miss. Not once. On the Iron Fong, The comms were filled with screaming voices, orders to retreat, pleas for help, curses shouted in fear. But no help was coming. No retreat was fast enough. In less than 10 minutes, the Dominion fleet had been reduced to 2 ships. The Iron Fong and one last frigate limping away with half its hull gone. Kvar looked at the screen, his golden eyes locking on to the Resolute. The human vessel hung there now, silent and still, its weapons cooling, its engines quiet. It wasn't in a hurry. It didn't need to be. Because they all knew the hunt wasn't over. It was just letting them feel the weight of what came next. The end of the fleet. The void was quiet now.
Too quiet.
The burning hulks of destroyed Dominion ships floated like tombstones, their twisted metal catching the faint light of distant stars. The air inside the Iron Fong's bridge felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were pressing inward. Only 2 ships remained. The Iron Fong, the pride of the Vraeth Dominion's fleet, and a single wounded frigate, limping across space like an animal with a broken leg. Kvar stared at the display. His jaw was set, but deep inside he knew the truth. There was no winning now. No brilliant maneuver would turn the tide. This was no battle. This was an execution. The Resolute floated ahead, framed by the wreckage it had created. Its weapons were quiet, its engines barely glowing. And yet, its very presence radiated the same crushing pressure it had carried since the moment it appeared. "They're not moving," the tactical officer said softly, almost afraid to speak too loud. "They don't have to," Kvar replied, his voice low. "They're waiting for us to decide how we die." The frigate captain's voice cracked over the comms. "Admiral, request permission to retreat." Kvar said nothing. He looked at the glowing silhouette of the human warship on the screen. It wasn't advancing. It wasn't firing. It was watching. The human voice returned, this time echoing across every surviving Dominion frequency. "This is your last moment. Leave this place or be erased." It was the same calm tone as before. No anger. No mockery. Only certainty. Kvar's claws dug into the armrests of his chair. "We are the Dominion," he hissed. "We do not retreat." The frigate captain's voice came back, panicked now. "Then you will die, Admiral. And so will I." Before Kvar could respond, the frigate's engines flared to life. It turned sharply, breaking formation, fleeing into the dark. The Resolute moved. It didn't chase the frigate at full speed. It didn't need to. It slid forward with a predator's patience, closing the gap in seconds. A single beam of cold light flashed, so fast that, for a moment, the frigate seemed untouched. Then it split apart. 2 perfect halves drifting away, leaking fire and debris. The human voice came again, quieter now. 1. On the Iron Fong, every officer felt a chill crawl down their spine. The Resolute turned to face them. "Admiral," the sensor officer whispered, "they're charging their main weapon again." The glow began, slow, deliberate, almost ceremonial. The hum filled the bridge, vibrating through the deck, rattling consoles. Each second felt like an hour. Kvar's eyes never left the screen. He refused to look away. "They will remember," he murmured. The Resolute fired. There was no explosion in the traditional sense. The beam cut through the Iron Fong's shields as if they didn't exist, slicing across the ship's hull from bow to stern. For a fraction of a second, the Vraeth flagship seemed intact. Then, with a soft groan of metal, it began to break apart. The bridge shuddered violently. Alarms wailed. Consoles burst into sparks. Crew members were thrown from their stations. Kvar stood amidst the chaos, watching the human ship grow smaller in the viewport as the Iron Fong's bow split open to the cold vacuum. The last thing he heard was that human voice, steady and unshaken. "Your fleet is gone. Your war is over." And then, silence. The Resolute turned away, leaving the burning remains of the Dominion fleet behind as it slipped into the endless dark. The aftermath. The war was over. But the silence that followed felt heavier than the battle itself. The wreckage of the Dominion fleet drifted in the cold emptiness, their shattered hulls tumbling slowly in the void. What had once been 12 proud warships was now nothing more than twisted metal and drifting ash. Among the debris, escape pods floated in eerie stillness. Their weak distress beacons blinked faintly, the only sign of life in a battlefield that had turned into a graveyard. Inside those pods, Vraeth survivors sat in stunned silence, their eyes wide, their bodies trembling, not from the cold, but from the memory of what they had seen. One such pod held Admiral Kvar. He sat strapped into a narrow seat, staring blankly through the small viewport. Beyond the glass, the wreckage of the Iron Fong spun slowly, a broken monument to his pride. The human warship was gone. It hadn't lingered to finish them all. It hadn't stayed to gloat. It had simply turned away, its engines glowing faintly as it slipped back into the deep black, vanishing into the very darkness it seemed born from. The pod's radio hissed with scattered voices from other survivors. None spoke of victory. None spoke of revenge. They only whispered about the humans. They knew our names, one survivor murmured. They knew our crimes, another said, voice shaking. They didn't fight like we do. They fought like. The voice trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Kvar closed his eyes. The memory came back sharp and unshakable, that calm voice, delivering death like it was a duty, not an act of rage. The way the Resolute had moved, patient and deliberate, killing not because it wanted to, but because it had to. He knew then that this was not the last time the Vraeth would hear of the humans. But the next time, it would not be the humans who were surprised. Somewhere, far beyond the wreckage, the Resolute returned to its patrol. On its bridge, the human captain stood in silence, watching the stars slide past. First contact, the calm officer said quietly. Hostile fleet neutralized. The captain nodded once. His gaze was fixed on the black beyond the glass. They'll tell their people about us, he said. Good. The Resolute turned, vanishing into the darkness, once more, a shadow among shadows, a name that would spread like a warning across the stars. And in the cold silence of deep space, the legend began.